Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Asmara Mitchell here, and you are watching the Queenie for President YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, share right now, and turn on notifications. This one is a quick one. Just want to talk about a subject today that's really close to my heart, and I think it affects the majority of people that I've really ever met or interacted with, and it affects them in different ways. So today I just want to talk quickly about the effects of drugs on our society and communities, and really just open a dialogue about that so we can, start to move forward and have more open and honest discussions about these types of topics. The reason that I wanted to do this one today is because I've reflected obviously on the videos that I've been posting and sort of looking back at my life and really trying to assess why things happened and what I can change and what I couldn't change. And what I've realized is that the presence of class A drugs and recreational drugs, you know, is actually one of the main reasons and main causes why so many people have really let us down. And by us, I mean me and the children I grew up with. And I think it was that drug usage and it was that, the dominant culture of social circles of people using drugs as a norm that really affected my childhood. Um, and I know this because I am not a drug user. And I have grown up and grown to understand the difference between myself and people that I grew up looking up to, admiring, and realizing, you know what, you didn't have it all figured out. Your lives weren't perfect, and the reasons were because you were drug users. A lot of the time I would spend with adults was spent watching them using, and we literally grew up thinking this was normal. We literally, as children, okay, it wasn't always the class A stuff. And yes, we were aware that some of that was going on, but a lot of people would try to shield children from that. But what they didn't shield us from was drug use, period. So even smoking cigarettes. Now, I've I've got friends that do smoke cigarettes, but they refuse to allow their children to witness it, or they like to believe, they'd like to think, I'm preventing my children from even seeing me drink alcohol or smoking cigarettes because that in itself is influence. That in itself is time spent away from my children, finances taken out of my household to fuel a habit which is not good for me. You know, the facts the facts and statistics are not all very clear online. When you go looking, some places it says 3% of the UK is said to be have used drugs in the last year. Some other places it says it's somewhere as close to 16%. We know that's not true. We know that some people won't report their uses of drugs. So there's no way that these statistics could be factual and could really be reflecting what's going on in our society. Because if it's one thing I know from talking to people is that we all know somebody who is using. I'm gonna take cigarettes out of it just for this next quick portion. When I say using, I mean additional substances that are illegal. And again, as I said, have been normalized either through culture, through social media, uh, through music, art, what have you. A lot of us have become desensitized. The problem is and I hate the fact that I'm going to use this, and I'm going to be brave because a lot of people will come at me about this because a lot of people who use this particular drug are not bad people. They're not taking it because they're addicts, and they're not addicted to the substance as far as they are concerned. And it's a rhetoric I've heard year in, year out, time in and time again. But at the end of the day, cannabis has been harmful for a lot of people. Okay, people I know. I've directly seen somebody who is just gone from perfectly normal functioning adult to literally developing a habit which has taken them away from their families. So it's either they're arguing with people, they're borrowing money from people, um, they're refusing to get on with, day-to-day things. They're being slowed in their progress because they are cannabis users. And they might do it with their families, they might do it with their friends, and therefore, everybody's comfortable, everybody's happy. But I'm telling you, as somebody who was small and witnessed it, I'm telling you that it isn't normal. I'm telling you that if you have a cannabis addiction, or you are a heavy cannabis user, you need to try and get help for that. You need to try and get that out of your system, honestly. And I'm gonna leave that there because I know that's gonna rile up so many people, and it's not what I've come on here to do. I'm just saying, my dad was a heavy cannabis user, right? That prevented him from being a good dad. And I'm telling you that facts because watching him doing his thing, yeah, seeing the changes in him over the period of an hour or 2 hours and thinking, you know what, this is not the same person I was talking to, or not being able to contact him because he's busy in his cannabis use. And let's not pretend, okay, that people are not aware that cannabis in itself is a culture and it is something that draws people in. You become closer to other cannabis users, and in some cases, you will be more open to trying other substances. I haven't come on here to have a rant. I've literally come on here to talk about more so the heavy stuff, the class A stuff. But we have to start somewhere because for all of the people I know that are taking class A drugs, they started somewhere. And that is a gateway drug, and it was something we've all grown up understanding that it is, at least here in the UK, it doesn't have the same effect as it has in other places. Cannabis in the UK in particular has ruined a lot of lives. And the point is, it's not farmed here. It's not farmed in a natural way. It's not made in a it's made in a very synthetic way. And a lot of cases, there are a lot of substances added to the cannabis that people are using now to make it addictive. It is not the same as going abroad and finding some local farmer who knows exactly how to make natural produce healthy and good for you. It's not the same thing. And I think a lot of UK cannabis users will attest to that. Yeah, a lot of people know that drug within itself is not the same formula, the same form as it naturally was. Okay, so that's what I want to talk about in terms of that. And in terms of class A drugs, we see it every day. People sitting on the streets, literally at their death's door, on their death's beds, because they are addicted to heavy substances. Now we know that there's a lot more to it. We know that a lot of people can be groomed into this lifestyle. We know that a lot of people can be forced into this lifestyle. I've heard terrible stories of people being injected against their will. You know, people being forced to sell these things with no option, no food at home, no parents to support them properly. So we're not, when I say we, I mean me and people I discuss these things with. We would never judge a person who's either a user or somebody who promotes using these drugs or is selling them. I would never judge a person because there's a story behind, there's a subjective story behind every single case. And the difficulty is we all tend to look at things objectively because we don't have the capacity to sit down with each and every person and try to work out psychologically what's going on, what are the sociological factors. We just don't have the resources. But we all individually know somebody who has been a victim to these diseases and these addictions, and even sometimes selling and profiteering off of people's addictions is an addiction in itself. We all, a lot of us, should I say, know somebody who got into that lifestyle and they just can't stop themselves. They know it's wrong. They know that they don't want to be doing it. They know they don't want to end up in jail, but God knows they are tied up in some things that they cannot easily get themselves out of. And for some people, they're addicted to that adrenaline, addicted to the rush of that fast lifestyle, the fast money, and the street lifestyle. So at the end of the day, unless we open forums and spaces where people are safe enough to lend us the resources to understand why these things are happening, we're never going to get to the bottom of it. We've got some boroughs like the Lewisham borough where apparently 50% of the children, that's half of the children, either will never gain academic capability to work and be self-sufficient from the government, or are in foster care. Those statistics are so alarming that I'm surprised there isn't a forum itself every day talking about this, because I'm going to guarantee that a lot of those cases where those children are ending up in those situations are drug induced um neglect, parental neglect, and there is probably a story of either alcohol dependency or that lifestyle, somebody who's just completely lost control of themselves, with drugs being one of the factors. So as I said, with the Lewisham borough, maybe that is a special case. Maybe it is something, there's a particular factor why this is occurring in that borough, but I don't think it's normal. And rather than sit here and justify and normalize and desensitize drug usage, I would rather work out why children are losing their families and support networks because people have habits that they cannot control. It doesn't make any sense. And if you're telling me that a lot of these people started out smoking cigarettes in school, which led to get a flood of drugs and influx of drugs being appropriated within their culture, then we have to put a stop to this lifestyle, this culture, especially in the UK, where there is a pandemic here. There is a pandemic. We know that alcohol usage is very high here. We know that alcohol is also a gateway drug and is also a gateway substance. But what is really going on? What are we really doing about it? Like I said, I'm pretty sure that the reason I was abused was because either I was sold for drugs, or the people who were involved were taking drugs, or and were in drug induced psychosis as to why they justified their actions. I'm pretty sure that a blind eye was turned because people were either in drug induced comas and didn't have the capacity to, function and look around their space and say, oh, wait, I need to keep an eye on these kids. I need to keep an eye on this person who's in my house. I'm talking about first-hand experience, looking and thinking, actually, you're not very alert. You're not very aware. People could come into your home and get away with a lot of things because you are literally out of it. Regardless of whether it's drink or not, or whatever it is, you're out of it. You're not able, you're not capable. But why are we still allowing this in our society? Why are there still children coming forward and saying, oh, my mum or my dad is done this and that, he takes this and that, and I've lost my family? Well, why is this not something that we are literally sitting down talking about every single day? you know and I'm a person who, I'm not a product of my environment per se. I haven't fallen victim to those traps. I don't know psychologically why I've turned around and said, I don't want that. But I'm telling you how easy it would have been for me to wind up in those situations. It's so readily available, the same as going to buy um packet of crisps in the shop. It could happen to absolutely anyone. And there are a lot of people at the same time working to try and stop this, but nobody from the other side of the situation is coming forward and saying, what, we're going to actually help push these initiatives to stop this from continuing. And then the other factor, which is more so why I came on here to discuss this, is because let's have a look. Let's have a look at social media and how many of our influencers fall victim to these same traps. Either come on here as perfectly normal with no detrimental habits and either develop them whilst they're sitting in front of our in front of our screens online, or are being targeted by groups and individuals who put people in these situations. Let's think about how many people come forward and say, look, I need to go to rehab. I've been in rehab. Let's think about how we are normalizing and desensitizing that, and why we are doing that. Why are we not up in arms? Why is there not outrage that a person can have a career online in front of us and be at home behind closed doors developing a most life-threatening disease that could be prevented with the right help and support? The problem there is these people are subconsciously and consciously influencing not just our children but everybody. It's in the work they produce. And why are we okay with this? Why are we not saying, you know what, if we find through drug testing and all the rest of it that some of the major influencers with the largest followings are involved in these lifestyles, we have to remove you from the public eye. We have to remove you from the public consciousness. This has to be something that is dealt with now, not another time, when our society falls victim to the next trap that comes out of this, because you can see that this is developing. You can see we've gone from serious alcoholism in the UK, which we are very widely known for, to the breakdown of families, to the abuse and neglect of children. What next? We've already got issues with unemployment, people not being able to function at work. What happens next? Where is this leading us? And I don't want to come on here and make this massive speech, and for it to be in vain or to fall on deaf ears, because I know there are people listening who are struggling right now with these addictions. What I'm saying is, we're not talking about today. We're not talking about, oh, don't come back on my channel, you've got problems. Don't sit here with your problems and your addictions and you're not welcome here. You're welcome here. What I'm saying is, when will we normalize the discussion instead of normalizing turning a blind eye and knowing and not saying anything, and knowing and not helping and assisting? When will we normalize saying to people, look, I know you've got a problem and that's what we're dealing with before anything else, because there are so many people affected by your behaviors. you know if, God forbid, if this was to happen to me, a lot of people would be affected, and a lot of people are relying on me. That is the message that we need to be sending out, for people to understand that their health, their mental health, and them in a good position is what we all need. They are needed in that way, not in the way of, we don't really care how you end up. Once we've used and abused you and the public's done had their way with you, you can be whoever you want. We can't allow it anymore. So I don't want to start on, which is something I'll discuss in the next video, which is my understanding of some of the new forms of religions. And I don't know if you classified, I don't want to come for any Satanists, but how that links and to the drug usage and the increase in violence and drug uses and misdemeanors and miscreant behavior. And I'm not coming for people who believe in Satanism. You can worship and do whatever you want, but where do we draw the line to where people decide what they want to be influenced by? And that's where I'm going to leave it today, because as I said, and I've made mention in my previous videos, um what you would call the witchcraft that I grew up understanding, in the culture that I was from, it can be likened to Satanism. So that's what I classify it as, and why I've used that phrase. And we do need to have these discussions out in the open, because the more people have to hide, is the more the effects are out of our control. The effects on our society are out of our control. And I worry about my daughter, and I worry about if she has children. I mean, I'm even scared to have any more children, because it's just so much pressure to try and keep them on the right path. So I do want people to consider what I'm saying, and tell me what you think in the comments. Tell me whether you think drug usage is absolutely okay, and people should be allowed to do what they want and be strung out and be on the streets and lose it all. And tell me, likewise, if you agree with me. Let's have a discussion. And I just wanted to leave you with this analogy. There's a rich man, millions and billions of pounds in his account, and he has a very, very strong, dangerous addiction to heroin. He has a maid to clean his house. He has a chauffeur to drive him around. His children have a nanny. He has a cook and somebody to do his laundry and to wake him up and wipe the drool from his mouth in the morning. Is he the same as a man who has nothing and he lives in the streets and he has 6 children and he's developed a heroin addiction? But the man with the billions and millions of pounds may be a massive influencer online, and he may be somebody who's encouraged thousands of people to try hard drugs, either at his parties or through his discussions about it in his music. Do you think that's fair on our society? If he's got the resources to be able to have a drug addiction, it doesn't affect him. He can take his IV drips and get his medical resources on tap. If he has an overdose in his bed, there's somebody there within 10 minutes. It's that what I'm talking about. It's not fair for us to be influenced into lifestyles that we cannot maintain, so that the line has to be drawn. And thank you for listening to my video today. Again, share this to someone who needs to see it, and I will leave it there. Your auntie Asmara likes to have a little rant. This I guess you could call a rant, but it's something really close to my heart, and I do want to see change in our society and for us to take back the reins, and take control of what happens to our communities and to our children at the end of the day. So thank you very much for tuning in. Have a blessed day. Goodbye.